we have enough space to do some quick intros, just for everyone to kind of share a bit about like where they're at in relationship to like, do you have trees planted? Are you hoping to have trees planted? Are you helping other people plant trees? Do you just think chestnuts are cool, but maybe don't have an immediate relationship to planting chestnuts? That's also okay. Um, so maybe I will just start introing kind of why we're all here and what the purpose is of the meeting, and then we could do just a quick round of intros since we have a smaller crew tonight. I will say for folks like John Smitch, who were on last time, I think this conversation may be quite redundant with the first town hall we did. The intention here really is to kind of be hearing from other voices in the region who are interested in producing chestnuts in these first two calls, and then to kind of come back to you all with a little bit more of a charted, I don't want to use the word curriculum, but like a charted program for the next few years of the webinars that we're doing under this grant. But I guess I'll give a little bit of context because not everyone was on that last call. So tonight is the second webinar in what will probably be 12 webinars, so 10 more after tonight, between now and the end of 2026. Bread Tree Farms is hosting these webinars as a part of our organic market development grant that we received from the USDA. So we applied for funding to research and design and complete a feasibility study for what we expect to be the largest organic chestnut processing facility in the country, and really the largest chestnut processing facility agnostic of organics in the US. And as a part of that, we're also working with some culinary partners and doing market outreach to potential buyers, and then also working back upstream with current growers and aspiring growers to help share what we're learning on the ground as organic producers, to help kind of grow the body of knowledge around organic chestnut production in the region, and hopefully both support more folks to plant trees, support folks who have planted trees to be successful, and ultimately build kind of the supply system with you all that this facility can serve. The whole spirit of building this facility is it will serve our business, but it will also serve likely 4 to 5 times what we will ever produce in terms of chestnuts. And so we really want it to be designed as a resource for the region and for anyone who wants to grow chestnuts organically in the region. As a beginning grower, and when I was getting started, I think the two things, other than having a lot of money, the two things that were lacking was kind of know-how in the region on how to do chestnut production or specifically do it organically, and then also kind of having any sense of guarantee that there was a plan to go to market with potentially millions of pounds of chestnuts here in the region. And so we're really trying to do our part to kind of fill some of those gaps in a grower to grower kind of way. And that's why we're hosting these webinars. Specifically, as I said a second ago, specifically the intention with these first two is sort of a town hall style of, we've got some questions to kind of motivate conversation tonight, but really we want to be hearing from folks about both how this facility can best benefit other growers in the region, and kind of just learn about kind of what everyone would like to learn about in the future webinars, what topics are of interest, whether that's tree protection or genetics or planting strategies, and just learn from you all about what's going to be most valuable in this series. Bug, I think the only other thing we had talked about starting with here was a little bit about who Bread Tree is. Anything else you want to add before we do intros for everyone else?
No, that was great.
A quick blurb on Bread Tree. This is our 6th growing season in business. Today we manage a little over 200 acres of planted chestnut and hickory acreage. By the end of next spring, it'll probably be about 250. Most of that is owned land that we've been kind of building our land under ownership over the past few years specifically. And then we have about 30 acres in leases, which is how the business got started. And then another, depending on how this fall goes in the near future, about 50 acres of acreage where we're managing that for landowners. So landowners are paying us to plant and manage those trees into production. Yeah, we're really fired up on tree crops and growing them organically and creating diversified agroforestry systems that kind of work with the heterogeneity of northeastern landscapes. We're planting a lot of hickory in our bottomlands, a lot of chestnuts in our uplands, um, and then kind of finding other areas to create more diversity around the edges. Starting to look at sea buckthorn production. Have a handful of persimmons and mulberry planted in little pockets around the farms, and a variety of walnut refugia and all sorts of fun things like that. But predominantly chestnut and hickory production, and increasingly integrating livestock. We'll probably have our first owned sheep herd on site next year. So far, all of our silvopasture has been in partnership with other grazers. Yeah, that's a quick blurb. Happy to share more about Bread Tree and what's going on for us. But so we've got 11 people. For those of you who have just joined in the past few minutes, we said we've got a small enough crew tonight that maybe we could just hear from everyone, maybe where you're calling in from today, kind of how you're currently relating to chestnut growing, as in, are you an aspiring grower, a current grower, someone who hopes to be a grower many years into the future, someone who just wants to eat chestnuts and is curious to hear what growers are doing. And yeah, and then we'll have some more opportunity in breakout rooms to hear from everyone as well on some other topics. So name, where you're from, and how you're relating to this work today. Shane, you want to start us off and then call someone else out after that?
Sure. So Shane Hardy, I live in the southern Hudson Valley. My business partner John Huntsman's on here as well, and we're beginning chestnut growers. I have some experience helping to take care of trees that other people have planted in the past and harvest them, and have some experience when they're a little more mature at a very small scale. Um, and yeah, we have a bunch of seed. We got a bunch of seeds last year. We have a bunch of seedlings, some in an air prune bed, some in the ground, and we're looking forward to planting our first roughly 6 acres, a tiny bit, just to sort of workshop our planting strategy this fall, and probably most of it in the spring. And we're in Washington County, so close to the Bread Tree folks, who thank you for pioneering the way, guys. Really appreciate it. Uh,
And
how
Shane,
about, yeah,
before I
go ahead.
forget, John's your next door neighbor, so we got to get you guys introduced when you're up on site in Hebron.
Yeah, that's
Oh, amazing. Well, what
maybe that'll make a good.
what
Is that a
that's perfect.
segue? I guess or.
Yeah, I was gonna call on you. So
Yeah, well, I didn't know that. So that's good to know. We'll have to get together sometime. My name is John Zimick, and yes, we have a place right around the corner from the farm there in Rupert, Vermont. And I guess I'd be in the aspiring grower category. I think I am anyway. I'm a bit older than than everybody I see on the screen here, and I've been in agriculture my whole life. I've owned a lot of, we still own quite a few cattle, but growing things like this would be something new, and having passed the places that Bread Tree has done just got me really curious, and I've seen a lot of things. I've traveled a lot in my job over the years, my work in agriculture, California, Mexico, Central America. I've seen a lot of trends come and go, things like well, all kinds of things. Grapes going to nuts in California, and avocados in Mexico, and all kinds of other crops like that. Some have hit, some haven't. And chestnuts seem like a pretty cool thing to me. I think you got a winner here, and I'd like to get in on it. One thing I really enjoy about agriculture is the fact that people cooperate with one another. They like learning from each other, and I think, don't know any other businesses, but I think compared to other businesses, I've always thought it was great the way shares so much so freely, and for everybody's benefit. And so I think this format is terrific, and as you guys move forward, I think it's really going to help a lot. So anyway, that's my story. I'll turn it over to whoever's next. And by the way, Anson, where do you live in Maine? I lived there for a couple of years and bought some cattle from a guy in central Maine over in Turner, I think he was.
hmm I'm out in China, just south of Waterville,
Oh,
north of Augusta. I
okay. So
guess,
you're up, that's
yeah,
pushing towards the Belgrade Lakes, isn't it? Up that way,
yeah, it's not so
I
far.
guess. Yeah.
Definitely within uh, driving distance. I guess I'll go. I'm Anson. I run Full Fork Farm in China, Maine. Uh, I've got uh, 6 acres of chestnuts planted that are uh, 3 years old. Uh, I mostly am a strawberry farmer. I do 2 acres, you pick and wholesale, uh, and have been establishing a number of other perennial crops, berries, nuts. I have like an acre of heart nuts, 2 acres of honeyberries, kiwi berries and blueberries, and uh, I in total I have like 15 acres planted out and another 10 acres that I'm now thinking about what to do with long term. And so chestnuts might play a role in that as well. Um, but 6 acres seemed like plenty to get started with.
Anson, you want to pass it to someone else?
Sure. Let's go with John Huntsman.
Hey everyone, good evening. John Huntsman, my business partner, good friend Shane gave an intro of our venture, but yeah, right now I'm pretty new to the farming world. Always have had a interest in it, and I've been talking with Shane about ideas for several years now, and this one is the one that came to life. So really excited about it. And yeah, I'm learning as we're going. And I know Shane's kind of learning as he's going too, but he also comes with a wealth of knowledge of farming in general. So definitely taking notes. But yeah, have a bunch of seedlings in my backyard right now, growing in some air beds, and looking forward to rolling my sleeves up and planting some the next couple upcoming seasons. And yeah, just here to listen and see where I can help out. And I will pass it to on my upper right, Bug Nichols.
Hi, I'm Bug. I work at Braintree, doing I guess a lot of everything. And I I don't know what to say for my intro. I've been planting trees with Russ starting as a volunteer in 2020. And I started working for Braintree full time last I guess I don't actually know. I transitioned into full time between March and October, I guess. Yeah. And I will pass to Jess.
Hey everyone, I'm Jess. I work with Interlaced Commons, which is an organization based in Vermont, works around the Northeast, planning and implementing agroforestry systems. And that includes planting chestnut trees. And I'm here to hear more about this project. And yeah, I'm new-ish to agroforestry myself. I joined Interlaced Commons team this past spring, so just soaking all of this up. So appreciate it.
Let's hear from. Okay. Did you say someone, Jess? Let's hear from Bing.
Hi, first time dialing into one of these. I'm Bing. I have with my agroforestry farm in Bethel, New York. I'm just like literally 7 minutes away from Bethel Woods, which is where Woodstock 69 actually happened, nowhere near Woodstock. They've a pretty cool concert venue out there. I also run a nature retreat center on my land. So we have a big building, it's a nice, pretty log cabin place. People from the city and New Jersey and all that tend to come and do yoga, meditation retreats and all that. And that to me works beautifully with what I'm trying to do with regenerative agriculture, because just as important as it is to do the actual regenerative agriculture work, which is honestly what I'm most passionate about, it's also just as important to for people to know about it. For people to just open their eyes to hey, there's a different way we can feed ourselves and create more abundance for ourselves that's in right relationship with the earth and nature, and and it's this beautiful way. But it's got to take some habit changes. You got to change. We got to eat different. So those two things work together. I say I spend 80% of my time on the farm, and 20% on the retreat center. But of course, as this group in particular knows all too well, any revenue I get right now is from the retreat center, because I only just planted my I planted my food forest in May 2022 was the big first phase of planting. So really young. I've got hickories, I've got black walnuts, I've got hazelnuts, persimmons. It's kind of like this polyculture thing. For the specific subset of my site that I did that was suitable, but I'm really contemplating now what to do with the next one. Well, the richest land, the richest soil that I have, that is indeed suitable for chestnuts. I didn't plant chestnuts in my first phase of planting because soil's too wet, don't drain well enough. But I've got about 10 acres of land or more actually, maybe 12, that will drain well enough and is suitable for chestnuts, and I'm considering it. I'm also considering other tree crops, and I'm just still figuring it out. Many things are the economics matter, but also just what I love matters. And so I'm still kind of deciding what would be the main backbone planting for this next sort of 12 acres that I'm doing, that is suitable for almost any tree crop that you could grow in the Northeast, which is nice. So it's a good problem to have, but I'm still working it up. And I'm also integrating animals into my agroforestry system now. I just got my breeding stock of geese and Muscovy ducks and all that, and I know a lot of folks here, and sheep and cattle seem to be the primary ones, but I'm actually working on poultry because I want the option to be able to plant denser, and I don't want sheep stripping my young trees. So that's why I'm experimenting with poultry. I'll pass it to Jonathan.
Hey, all. I'm Jonathan. I'm a full-time poultry farmer in Sunderland, Mass. And my partner and I have an really early farm in the hill towns of Western Massachusetts in Plainfield. We have plans to plant all sorts of things in the spring of 2026. And we hope that a good portion of it will be chestnuts, but we don't know. And that's why we're here, to kind of learn, see what's up, see how that might work. Yeah, I'm just really excited to be part of this and hearing about what Red Tree was up to, and the scale of how y'all are advancing is really inspiring. So just really excited to be a part of it. Who's left? Vincent.
Yep. Hey, folks. Vin Cardillo. I'm in Western Massachusetts. I'm just here to learn. I'm looking at buying a large parcel of land and orchard and converting it to a chestnut orchard. And I'm just here to learn. My full-time job is not in this world, but I have an affinity towards it and would like to put some of my energy towards it. But I need to learn, and I don't know much. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here, Vin. I think Alex is the last person to go here.
Hi, folks. I'm Alex Caskey with Bardell Brook Farm, and we're up in the Champlain Valley of New York. Two main enterprises for our farm are silvopastured catadins and then tree crops nursery. My specific interest in chestnuts is more on the nursery supply side. I see that as a bottleneck that I at least encountered when I was trying to find chestnuts initially. And along those lines, in 2020 I sourced chestnuts from Buzz Ferber at Perfect Circle Farm, Greg Miller at Route 9 Cooperative, and then a few trees from Burnt Ridge Nursery on Washington. And I'm super stoked because this year I'm getting my first reasonable nut harvest. I mean, as in a few dozen a tree, but as anyone can attest to, that's really exciting, especially when you're planting chestnuts somewhere where people tell you they don't grow. But our farm, it's 60 acres, about 35 open, but we have really good soil, but a high water table. And so I'm curious how many places I could really plant at scale on those 35 open acres. The trees I do have planted that are doing well are up in the farmstead in some really well draining sandy loam. So that might explain their vigor. But yeah, so just sort of that constraint of where I could even plant at scale has me focused on the nursery side, sort of genetics, not necessarily breeding. I think there's a lot of folks that are doing that a lot better than I could, but I would like to be a germplasm proliferator. And I think our geographic location in the Champlain Valley, we're inside the Adirondack Park, might lend itself, to other folks who want cold hardy genetics. That can help trial those, although Buzz Ferber's got me beat by his own probably. Yeah, I think I'll leave it. Or I mean, the sheep and silvopasture, personally, I've mostly separated the potential high value tree crops from the sheep, not intentionally, just more that's the way it's worked out. From a silvopasture standpoint, I'm really interested in tree fodders for livestock. So honey locust, persimmon, mulberry, and then I got to give a shout out to willow and poplar because I feel like they're the ugly stepchild of the whole conversation. But I think willow's gonna play a huge part in getting us out of this mess, personally. But we could save that for a different webinar. I think if I'm the last one, I'll just wrap it up there.
Hey Alex, quick question for you. You planning to do a lot of grafting or more just seed grown?
I'm open to both. I have successfully grafted sago and then promptly learned that's the easiest one to graft. But I still grafted it. And also that blight susceptibility is questionable on that one. But yes, I would like to continue to hone my grafting skills. I mean, maybe this is a topic that'll come up here. I feel like in the Northeast, seedling chestnuts from improved stock is going to be the primary driver, but I also think grafted trees have their place for sure. So the two grafts I have in our orchard right now are Layeroka and Sago, and Layeroka is producing its first nuts, should be pollinated with Chinese pollen from sleeping giant seedlings. So I'm excited about that. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Well, this is really cool. I think this is actually a quite different crowd than on the last call. This is a little more current or immediately aspiring producers, as in folks who like have plans to be planting over the next couple of years. So it's cool to get a little bit of a mix. We are going to be sharing the Google Doc that we used last time, kind of in the breakout rooms to record some of the conversation. I'll just be curious to see kind of how much of it is plus oneing what was discussed last time and how much of it is maybe some new insights, just based on you all having a bit of a different context. Also just personally cool to hear a bunch of folks in Western Mass. I am, although Bread Tree is headquartered in New York, I live in Western Mass and am local to a bunch of you folks, and love hearing about more agroforestry here.
Max
so
just popped in if you want to Max,
sweet.
if you want to just introduce yourself real quick.
Hey, Max.
Hi, Max.
Hi. Oh,
Hi.
Hi.
Max, we're doing name, location if you want, and kind of like your relationship to this work right now. Where are you at in your chestnut enterprise or plans? And you were on mute if you're talking.
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I am in Florida, Massachusetts. I've planted some trees with Bread Tree and a couple other people. and I'm sort of looking for places to plant chestnut trees near me, and may have found some potential ones, but I don't really have trees in the ground yet. So that's sort of where I'm at.
Cool. Thanks, Max.
Yeah.
So what we were going to do now is move into a breakout room. I'm about to send the question that we'll be discussing in those rooms, and Bug will put us all in breakout rooms. And there's going to be a Google Doc in the chat that everyone should have access to edit. We're kind of just trying to do open book note taking here so that we can collect, as I said earlier, a sense of what everyone's priorities are for, if you're going to join some of these future 10 webinars, what would be most helpful to discuss, learn, or discuss. Bug, I realize that hasn't been a question that we've framed. Like, are people interested in more guided discussion on certain topics, or do people want presentations from us on how we're doing things? I think it'll probably be some kind of hybrid of both over the course of those 10. But if people want to speak up on kind of the answer to that question, definitely want to hear what your preferences are. I think already tonight we've heard interest in different species of livestock. We've heard interest in focusing on nursery production or plant availability. We've heard interest in farm planning, planting layout. So I think we're going to do, what are we going to do, a 10-minute breakout here, Bug? Yeah, 10-minute breakout. The question is in the chat, and then we'll kind of come back together and have a little more discussion before doing a second breakout room.
Okay. Gonna send everyone to their rooms. It's my favorite
Thank
part
you.
of this whole thing. Go to your room. Okay. Oh, it's just asking.
Continue our joy
Hope we
session.
didn't lose them forever. Have you guys ever been sent into a breakout room alone by accident during all of the pandemic Zoom times and then like have this kind
By
of
accident.
triggering experience of being like, ah!
Go to your room. Think about what you've done.
Purgatory.
Right.
Are we back to just our same group waiting on the others for
No,
now?
they're
Oh, no,
back.
we're all back.
They're back.
Okay.
We're witnessing.
Heard everything you said.
I thought I was in here alone.
So we covered a number of different topics, but I'd love to just hear quickly, like, if there's anything that came up that, oh, I guess a couple people just got back here. If there's anything that came up in, how many rooms did we have, Bug? 3?
Just 2.
2. Okay. In either of the rooms then that, I don't know, felt like more or less, I guess more energized, like, oh, let's definitely have an entire webinar about this topic.
I'm happy to report on our breakout room. I took
Sure.
I didn't actually put the notes in the document because it was too much, but definitely genetics. I think people are excited about that. Got me thinking we could have Jesse come on for a guest webinar. It could be really fun. Livestock integration and silvopasture stuff, really big for people. Some stuff around financial modeling and economics, and just I think what assumptions we're basing what we're thinking about on, and how we're making decisions around all of that stuff. And then like really specifically processing equipment and harvesting equipment, and like what exactly, like at the model level and for different scales. And yeah, we talked a little bit about what we were talking with Ben Crockett about the other day. Yeah.
I had totally forgotten we'd had that conversation until you just said that.
Oh, a good one.
For the folks who are in not Bugs breakout room, we were having a conversation the other day with someone at a local agricultural nonprofit about how it's really cool to have these conversations that are a bit more grower centric, but that we also kind of have to be having this like sister conversation where it's a bunch of regional nonprofits or like the folks that Jonathan is working with on like climate smart commodities grant opportunities, so that they're hearing like, oh, if there were 3 rotary spaders in the region that were helping with install, that would make everyone's life a lot easier. Because ultimately, like, as I was saying in our breakout room, for folks who weren't in it, it's like Breadtree would be happy to share a lot about our management practices, and we're managing 220 acres and have money from investors who aren't us that are allowing us to do things at a more expensive level than I did when it was like just me, you know, and sweat equity and a lease. And so both being able to share what's working for us, but also trying to think about how do we better resource everyone in the region who's trying to do this work, whether that's shared equipment or technical support or leaning into the billions of dollars that the government's supposed to be allocating to this work. Cool. We had quite a bit of discussion on install. So like what, not just genetics of trees you're buying, but how were those trees grown and how does that impact whether you're using an auger or a spader or hand digging, and how much does that slow you down depending on what soils you're in, and how do you plan out that process knowing that it's going to go a lot smoother if you have a lot of people. But most small farms don't necessarily just have like 15 people they can throw at planting chestnuts, which, just so everyone knows, that's how most of the trees Breadtree manages were planted, is like work weekends where anyone who wanted to be paid was paid in cash and anyone who wanted to volunteer could volunteer. But I'd say like 85% of the trees have been paid by people who like otherwise worked full-time as vegetable growers, you know, in southern Hudson Valley, and then would like drive 2 hours and spend 3 days planting trees. That's like really how we've gotten a lot of this work done, is leaning into community and making it kind of a shared endeavor. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for that to continue as a practice beyond our organization. Someone mentioned that in our breakout room, like, you know, helping out at one person's farm next spring and someone else's farm next fall and someone else's farm the following spring. Like, I think it's pretty amazing what you can get done when it's not just like one diehard working alone in a field. Bing, I saw your hand go up there.
Yeah, sorry, when you say spader, are you referring to that tractor implement that's often used to incorporate cover crop back into the soil? How do
Yeah.
you use that for installing trees? Maybe we can take this offline. Like that's new to me because the one I've seen is the one that cuts the slot and has the wheels. And I'm also curious
Yeah.
as to like how that works for chestnuts, you know, because it
Yeah.
for persimmons and you never even try pawpaws, for example, with that method. But I don't know, maybe chestnuts, right? Like, yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not the mechanized version that I was miscommunicating. We trialed a spader last week to see, which is something that a lot of other folks are using as a row prep. You're not literally planting the tree.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we really liked the results, and we've hand planted every tree that we've planted. We've never used a tow behind. Our quick analysis is that if a tree produces 1 more pound because it was planted slightly better by hand, it will pay for the labor that planted that tree. So that argument to me kind of obviates the need for mechanized planting. I just have a hard time believing.
Mechanized planting lets you get the trees in 1 full year earlier.
Sure. Yeah. I think it also really depends on planting layout. I think from what I know of your planting, you probably planted much more densely than we're planting. I know
they're planting more densely. I haven't decided yet.
Okay. So yeah, I think mechanized planting definitely has a role. For us, we're planting, like, depending on the acre, but basically 65 to 80 trees per acre. And so that's like,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And what we're seeing actually in our early plantings is that really is too dense. Like we're going to need to start culling between years 5 and 7 before we have much information even about those trees' productivity because of how fast the trees are growing. So
excuse me, why do you say you have to cull them then? What's going on? I mean, they're not touching each other by then or anything, right?
Well, John, you stood under some of those trees in June that are touching. So can you think about like the tree that we were standing under that's got about a 15-foot spread?
Mm-hmm.
So that tree, that's in its 6th growing season. And so as soon as those canopies are starting to overlap, we don't have to immediately cut down a tree, but in our estimation, we'll have to cut down a tree in the next couple of years here in order to allow those canopies to keep growing in the way we'd like them to grow.
Well, what about making the rows closer together, let's say? Would that?
That's an option. It makes grazing a lot harder with ruminants.
Well, I would say the hell with that, but because I hate telling like my old man stories or anything, but like say 40 or 50 years ago, the recommendation for plant population in a cornfield is completely different than it is today. We plant instead of 10,000 seeds per acre, we plant 20,000 or 30,000 seeds per acre. What's right? Things about flood irrigation change completely, and it's the same plant. But anyway, I guess what I'm getting is I could see it changing in chestnuts as well, and I think what Jim was talking about earlier is I'd like to know more about that. So I get what you're saying about the trees together that way, but the rows still seems pretty damn far apart. So
yeah,
and what I'd like to like it. But that's why one of the reasons I asked you, Bug, if there was the economics on it, and what is the benchmark? Is it pounds of nuts per acre or per tree, or is that even important? I think it is. I think it's real important.
And there are plenty of folks planting on grid. Like there are folks planting 20 by 20 grids. I'd say at 20 by 20 grid, if you are trying to do agroforestry, I think the lifespan of anything other than the chestnuts will be quite reduced. Meaning you're really talking about the other enterprises you're managing for the first 5 to 7 years. And I think beyond that, the level of shade you'll have will make it pretty hard to have much else productive other than, like non-timber forest products or things like that. Which is not, again, that's not to say so you shouldn't do it. It's just for the ways that, for example, we're trying to manage where we're going to be grazing sheep. I don't think that it works with our management system to do a 20 by 20 grid. But I think, for example, for some of the folks thinking about poultry on this call, I could imagine that working really well. Because we're going to run out
I think
of
it's a
time.
neat idea.
Yeah, Anson, were you going to add something in there?
I was going to add something, but if you're wrapping it up, well, I would say for myself, with the chestnuts, I have 20 on 20, and I'm already finding it challenging to work with alley cropping on strawberries. That this year, my strawberries, they're in the heart nut peach block, which I was on 40 by 40 because grafted heart nuts are like pricey. But it's been a lot easier to work with tractor mechanization and with the strawberries in that section than on the 20 by 20. The other thing I was going to mention, because I know you're trying to wrap this up, is one thing that I'm interested in learning from you all is the fertility management that you're doing, especially organic for chestnuts. Just, yeah, throughout the season, what you've hit upon so far, what's worked, and what's been like cost effective for what you've gotten out of it.
Plus one to the question.
Sorry, what did you say, Bing?
Plus one to the Anson's question.
Oh, got it. All right. I will say we feel like that's an area where we're still learning a lot on, but I will happily include that on the list of things we're working on. We've got some interventions that we're putting to work right now. I don't want to get too caught up in discussing the content anymore. We have another question we wanted to get in here, and then, as you all are hearing, we'll have many more webinars where we can follow up. Sounds like we've got plenty of material to cover. The second question we wanted to get into, which you probably saw in that notes document, is what is the ideal role of this facility? And it's intentional facility / organization in your cropping system. Some of the context here is we are totally open to a future in which, for example, this facility is owned by a nonprofit, could even be a cooperatively managed, processing and marketing co-op down the line. The main reason it isn't today is Bread Tree has a lot of skin in the game on this facility being successful. And quite frankly, having like 100-person stakeholder discussion around getting this facility off the ground and built probably wouldn't have allowed it to work in the way our business needs it to work. And so our feeling was, let's get it built in a way that works for us, but let's design it in a way that works for many other people. And ultimately, the participants in this supply system will have a voice in this conversation, and we can think about, is there an organization that needs to exist around this, or is Bread Tree going to continue to be the manager of it? I don't want to set any false expectations here. Like, I would say for the foreseeable future, this is a Bread Tree owned entity. That is how it was sold to the USDA for this project. Like, we have never made any promises otherwise. I just want to be clear that like the overall goal here is that it is in service to any grower in the region who wants to benefit from it. And so in that spirit, I think we probably don't need to do a whole nother breakout here, but we just wanted to hear a little bit and some examples of how you all are thinking this facility could benefit you, and like to give you a sense of the full spectrum here. We anticipate that Bread Tree will probably serve an aggregator function. So there will be farms where, their main focus, for example, is going to market with poultry products, and their chestnuts are like a secondary or tertiary product. And for them, it's like, can the Bread Tree crew come harvest the chestnuts, and bring that raw product back to the facility and go to market with it and basically give us an offtake rate. Like if they take 1,000 pounds off our farm, we get $3 a pound, whatever that number ends up being. And that's basically our entire involvement in the chestnut market. There are other folks who are more like, could I bring you only my seconds? So basically like only the nuts with blemishes or the nuts that are too small to go to the fresh market, and Bread Tree will dry and mill and sell those as a flower crop, and people will get, you know, let's say 50 cents a pound for those seconds that they otherwise wouldn't have a market to sell into. Those are very different ways of relating. You know, that would be like someone who's selling 90% of their own chestnuts and processing them fresh, and then just like selling 10% as an offtake product to Bread Tree. We also imagine there will be a whole bunch of versions of that in between. You know, people who bring us 50% of their crop and deliver it to the facility. And so we just wanted to hear from folks like, which of those iterations is most interesting to you all? What questions you have about how it could work? What discussions would you all want to have to learn more about all the different options of how this facility could work? Yeah, any kind of conversation that sparks.
Can you go over it again? Just kidding.
Well, it brings up one thing that it brings up for me is, and a question that I had in the breakout group is around the cost and expense for processing equipment. Because I feel like having an understanding of what the costs are for that as a personal farm would also affect my answer as to my relationship that I'd want with Bread Tree, because it might like certain equipment is going to be very easily within the reach of myself as a farmer. Other equipment is going to be a much larger outlay, and something that's like, as a diverse nut and berry operation, not the best like investment to have something that's then sitting around for, you know, one particular purpose at one part of the season. Yeah.
I can give you a somewhat direct answer to that, I think. So if you stuck with 6 acres, you know, you'd be stoked if every year you got 12,000 pounds, I would assume. Like 2,000 pounds a year averaged would be really nice. Or in my understanding of chestnut production, that would be like a good goal. We model at less than that in terms of thinking about like our mature yields, just to be conservative. I think you could probably sell that fresh without making more than, I'm going to conservatively guess, like $20,000 to $30,000 of investment. You know, you could do like a kind of home scale hot water bath for weevil treatment. You could build a sizer for a few $1,000. You could bag, dry. Probably the most expensive thing would be cold storage, which you probably already have. Chestnuts sit in cold storage for like 3 weeks to cure. So, you know, all in, I think you're not talking about a 6-figure investment to sell all of your fresh crop. I think the seconds part, like if you in some years maybe have 2,000 pounds of nuts that you can't really sell fresh, I think you probably don't want to be investing in drying, shelling, and milling. That gets quite expensive, and it's not like you lose 2/3 of your weight when you dry. So if you have 2,000 pounds of seconds chestnuts, you're going to end up with like 600 pounds of flour. And I think in that case, like putting that on a box truck to New York, and you do 1 round trip a year for that, I think that would make more sense. So I'm just giving this not to say like, so
no, it's helpful what you're saying. No, it's great what you're putting out.
And so like, you know, but you're in a different situation than, for example, like a friend of ours who's planting 100 chestnuts, and like fundamentally their business is selling vegetables and some small fruit. And like the chestnuts are a nice to have, but for them, just knowing that like as long as they get those trees to maturity, they basically never have to do anything again, is a really nice way to think about the chestnut side of their enterprise. And so I would just think about it differently in terms of like what percentage of your revenue you're kind of like moving towards chestnuts being in your overall farm scheme. I think it's not about that, like any individual farm can't afford, or like in the long run, can't take out a loan to build that facility, or like some small scale version of the facility. It's more that having that regional level resource allows the folks who don't want to do that to not do it, or the folks who are struggling to build their market to sell 50% of their crop into a larger facility.
Totally.
Not everyone wants to market. So I think that's the other side of it.
And I guess I'd add to that. I think that the other thing that this sort of aggregator model allows is like it gives a different sort of visibility in the region to have something like Bread Tree versus, the little small chestnut, so which is like it's all important, but something like Bread Tree can have it puts it in sight to other people who would not necessarily be seeing it. And if you guys are marketing flour afterwards, it's going to have a much wider spread.
Yeah. I think the way I would frame it from like a economics perspective is like, we're just trying to create the best floor for the industry we can. Like if everyone goes out and plants chestnuts, and we're talking about creating millions of pounds of production in this region, everyone on this call will be disappointed if we plan on selling every pound of chestnuts at $12 a pound in perpetuity. And so like if we can create a market where chestnut flour is a highly sought after product, and your worst case scenario is you're selling to Bread Tree, who's like selling that as a premium product that it's done a really good job marketing, that's a way better worst case scenario.
Yeah, totally.
This is like kind of a negative way to frame it, but I do think if we succeed in that goal, it makes every other grower's future, like even the darkest version of it, is much brighter than if we all just assume we can all plant chestnuts and do like no broader market development and all go to market as individuals, and then all suffer as individuals when the conditions aren't what we'd hoped it would be.
Russell, I think that's an important point, and for me, that's one of the key things where like, look, I love growing trees. I'm not really much of a marketer. I'll do it if I have to, but more importantly, having a big player with capital, with skin in the game, with the supply behind it, that all the smaller growers like myself, would contribute in like a co-op or something like that. We need to build the market, because I'm from Malaysia. Chestnuts do not grow in Malaysia. I mean, we have a kind of like local chestnuts-ish, but growing up as a kid, we had a bigger chestnut eating culture than most of America today. It's absolutely ridiculous, right? The market here is so underdeveloped. You walk around, most Americans I know have never eaten a chestnut grown in America ever, right? And so developing that market, building that market is of paramount importance to all us growers. And I don't want to be doing that shit on my own. I'd rather be cooperating and selling into a co-op that I'm supporting, but I also, it's a co-op, so like it's not an, you avoid the sort of the old, the miller is an asshole problem, and it's because we all own a bit of a stake in it, or have an equitable distribution, and we're growing that market. Like Organic Valley used to be like a small co-op, and like look at that freaking giant, right? Like, so that's the kind of thing I'm interested in, where marketing, for better or for worse, in this world that we live in, is something that requires scale. Unless you're super tiny and super niche and you're just selling to the few guys who come to your vegetable stand, you can command premium prices at the farmer's market in your local thing. Sure. But if you got anything more than like 5 acres, like that's not really a thing. You need a proper market development.
One thing I would say, you mentioned it in the first chat, Russell, about the buyback program and the ability to like purchase some flour back after bringing it. That was interesting to me. Being able to like, reclaim some of that to sell at the local market. It's, yeah.
I have a sort of a related question. Like with the flour, it makes sense for it to be a buyback, but do you guys see any scenario where you would, sort of offer a service for processing someone else's nuts? And does that even make sense, for you or for a producer? I'm sure the scale matters, but like, say I, was able to bring you enough chestnuts where it made sense to like fire up your equipment and run an efficient batch for a day, whatever, and store it because I don't want to build cold storage, but I actually want to market my own chestnuts that I grew. Is that
Yeah.
something that makes sense in any way?
Yeah, so I think it makes the way we've been thinking about it, and we're like, I guess I just want to be very clear, like this is such early days. We are in like research and feasibility study mode. So like anything we're saying might be wrong.
For sure.
I think our initial hunch is that from a like supply system transparency perspective, like it will be very hard for you to literally get back the nuts that you brought to the facility to sell. If that makes so, like for us to actually have to track that through the supply system and basically like shut down the entire processing line while Shane's nuts move through it and not be able to move any other material through any of our processes is probably like prohibitively expensive and risky. But I think what we could do is have a system where it's like basically you're very clear when you drive away from the barn how much you brought and how much you brought in terms of salable product, right? Like by the time we've taken all the rocks and twigs and burrs out of it, and some of the nuts have, been thrown out of the sorter for being moldy or whatever it is. And then you basically could have whatever share of that you want back, I guess, at a price that's greater than the offtake so like if the facility is buying nuts at $2 a pound and you're buying them back at $5 a pound or whatever that number ends up being, with full transparency about what costs are built into that, that you could choose to do that.
For sure. And then if I, then I'd be at the whim of whatever markets I could sell into. If I could sell it at $50 a pound, great. If I could sell it at $6, maybe not as much. Okay, yeah, that's interesting, and that makes sense to me.
Think about the veg grower I mentioned earlier. If they're going down to Union Square Farmers Market every weekend, and like it's not feasible for them to process their own chestnuts, but they could take the chestnuts back from the bread tree facility and sell them for $20 a pound in Union Square. Like they should absolutely do that. There's no reason for them not to do that. And so I think if we're thinking about this truly as an asset to the region and like enabling the most diverse set of outcomes for different growers, we should be offering something of that nature. Obviously, I'm not going to commit on like what that price point is going to be for the buyback, but I think in spirit, that is definitely like well within what we're trying to do.
Russ, do you have any idea just in where like certain size mobile processing like maxes out on throughput or acreage?
Yeah, so we are talking about like some of these mobile processing trailer solutions, mostly for like Weevil hot water treatment and sizing. And I think my best guess is like you could do a couple 100 pounds an hour would be like the absolute max that you would do on the hot water bath. For a mobile trailer that's like not requiring you to have a semi to pull it around basically. But that could be a couple 1,000 pounds a day, and you've got a 10 to 14 day harvest window, so like that could be a 10 acre 20 acre operation could be served by a mobile processing trailer. But like then it's at that point there's actually no reason for it to be mobile because it's like entirely dedicated to that place. So like realistically a mobile processing trailer could serve like 10 1 acre operations, or you could just build on farm processing that suits those needs if you have a 10 to 20 acre operation. That again, that's very rough, but basically you don't need to have 100 acres to justify that investment is my assessment.
Can I chime in here?
Oh yeah, no, go.
Sorry, this is Alex with Bard Albrook, but so I just wanted to say this has been awesome to track. I think would be so valuable for me is just having transparent prices set for so many of these steps. And I think that that's like, we're so new at this collectively that just like, if I could see a transparent price sheet of like, this is what Bread Tree can store for, this is what they can, any step along the way, that just gives me information to then invest in my operation accordingly. And I think that's something that's missing right now. It's so difficult when you're
Yeah.
just trying to get started. And so what you said about setting price floors, like not even just for the nuts themselves, but even the processes along the way, I think is extremely valuable. Just anecdotally, I'll tell you, being in the Champlain Valley, I think I have a lot of farmer peers that I could convince to grow chestnuts, but they're not going to do it and want to market it themselves. And so I was talking to the New York Tree Crop Alliance folks about hazelnuts too. If I could serve as like a regional aggregator for my, little region of 12 farms and then bring it to you in one truckload, things like that start to become more feasible when you have clear price points. But, anyway, that's all I had for now, but
That's an awesome point. Thank you. Yeah, we generally are quite transparent. I would say we're like at least 2 years out from having any kind of reasonable sense of accuracy on price. Right now we're speccing equipment lines that are like between $250,000 and $1 million. And a lot of that's going to be about like what further funding we can get beyond this USDA grant, whether that's favorable debt or other government grant opportunities. I mean, one thing we haven't said on this call is like, realistically, we're actually talking about like a $5 to $6 million project, and we have $2 million from the federal government, which is in reimbursement form. So it means we have to spend money and then wait for them to pay us back. So overall, like this, we are about 6 months into like a ridiculously risky endeavor for our organization, and we're in a process of trying to figure out how to make that less risky. But I would say even by like a year from today, we will likely have fully purchased our equipment line, be most of the way done with the facilities renovation, and like be starting to have a sense of what it might look like to run a processing line. So it'll happen soon. And as soon as it's available, we will be sharing it with all of you transparently.
Thanks for doing the things you're doing.
yeah, that's huge. And I don't want that to go overlooked. Just like that transparency is not normal. So I just want to say thanks.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd hope any one of you would call us out if you think we're waning on that. But you've got 10 more webinars to do so.
Yeah.
Well, we're at 8:56. Is there anything else on the topic of kind of like how this facility or this, whether it's Bread Tree as an organization today or some theoretical co-op in 10 years, could benefit you as a grower or other growers in the region that you want to get down while we're taking notes?
What are you working on? Like, what are your thoughts on what you're trying to put together in terms of like publication? Are you trying to do it like a physical publication? Are you doing it online? Are you doing, is it video? Like, what are you guys trying to put together or overall
Yeah,
scope of this project?
so the scope of this grant includes the actual infrastructure, so like purchasing equipment and doing the renovation of the facility. But in terms of what'll be published, so we'll have this series of webinars, and then we will be, Savannah Institute is a partner on this project, and they'll be kind of our lead dissemination partner. We're going to put out a feasibility study that we actually are supposed to have done in January, at least like the first draft of it.
No chance that's happening.
But that includes things like basically, it's how I'm thinking about it is like we will put out a report that's how did we reach the conclusion we reached. It's not saying this is the only way to build a chestnut processing facility in our region, but for our specific context and the goals we had in mind, for example, there are basically no dried products coming out of Asian chestnut production. So like South Korea and China have massive chestnut industries, and for the most part, they're selling everything how I would describe as wet. So it's either like a fresh nut or a peeled, undried nut, or boiled nuts that are then like vacuum sealed. We're really interested in dried products, so we're actually going to Portugal and Italy in November to visit a bunch of processors and facilities. And part of the reason we're focusing on the Mediterranean is because that's actually where a lot of dried products are coming out of. Italy actually is importing from East Asian countries to then dry their products. And so like we feel like that context is a better fit for our overall goals. There might be someone else in Kentucky who says we want to only do vacuum packed soft boiled nuts. I don't if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. So I don't think our feasibility study will be comprehensive in that sense of like every possible iteration of processing, but it will try and be really clear on our thinking and like what we heard in all the calls we had with other nut industry professionals and equipment fabricators and things like that.
Is it like, is you're focusing on the feasibility of the of the facility? I'm assuming the business too. Is it also getting into like the feasibility of being a grower producer selling to bread tree and the different sort of iterations that could take? In that there, you have your 100-tree producer, you have your several acre producer. It's like, what is drawing the growers to you and then what do those relationships feasibly look like that is going to create this relationship that works out that ultimately is going to lead to the success of bread tree overall?
Yeah. I don't think that's like been in our list of objectives, but it sounds like a valuable one. I kind of think that could be a set of case studies that we actually could build almost collaboratively through this webinar series. So we're gonna do basically an initial report on our research and like kind of our pre-construction report, and then we're also gonna have an end of the grant reporting cycle where we disseminate like our final thoughts. And I think that including that set of case studies of like, here are the 10 pathways for engaging with this facility would be a really valuable output. It's not, Bug, as far as I can think of, it's not really something we've talked about, but
I think regardless of whether it's part of the grant, like from the perspective of this being a facility we want to actually help serve a regional industry, it would make sense that there's that kind of guidance around anyone who's thinking about how to interact with it. So it seems like one way or another that should exist.
Yeah. I'll also say, just to be really clear about our goals here, Anson, you said that in terms of like how it could help bread tree to be successful. I really don't want to differentiate there. Like,
yeah,
the only way this facility needs to be successful for bread tree really is for it to work for what is coming off of our farms. The overall goal here, like the successful design of that facility, is that it makes other people successful.
Yeah, totally.
The easy part is actually that it serves our farm. The harder part is,
you tell me if this is true or not, Russ, but I think to some extent the way that we've actually sized it is committing out bread tree success. Like it's tying bread tree success to the success of regional growers and of other farmers that we're trying to work with in a different way than if we had made it smaller.
Yeah,
which is an exciting
for
thing.
sure.
And I'm seeing Bing's question in the chat. It is 9:02 and we've all had a long day, and I do think we could talk about this for a really long time and probably have a whole webinar around this side of it. So I'm gonna defer to you, Russ, if you want to get into that right now, but I have to go can tomatoes, so
the short answer, Bing, is our team is working on it. We do have Blue Hill at Stone Barns is a partner on this grant, and they're going to be supporting us and doing a bunch of culinary outreach to other chefs. I'm going to events like the Fancy Food Show in New York and Expo West in Anaheim, and engaging buyers on that front. bug is interacting with a bunch of bakers and restaurants and getting flour in their chestnut flour in their hands from Route 9 in Ohio, so that they can be starting to trial recipes. We're thinking about doing like a TikTok, Instagram push with a bunch of like influencer chefs and getting chestnut flour in their hands, and they can do some cool recipes. So starting to think about things like that that are a little more like Gen Z and millennial friendly marketing. But I'd say pretty early days. We have applied for something called a value added producer grant, which is another USDA program specifically focused on marketing, which if we could get that would go a long way towards like more direct marketing work. But yeah, that's the short answer.
I got one more plug before we sign off, which is just for all you folks in Western Mass. I'm assuming at least some of our bread tree team will be at Jono's Harvest Fest on October 5th, because we're not doing Nut Fest this year, which we've historically helped organize, or anything at our farm. So would be great to meet some of you guys in person there if you want to come.
Yeah, I confirmed today that we will be serving chestnut porridge there.
Oh, we will be. That's great.
Can I put a plug out
about
too?
that?
What'd you say? What'd someone say?
I was asking to put a plug out for something. Someone else also was saying something.
Yeah. Here, I'll drop a link.
Out in Trumansburg, the 6th to the 9th, there's a farm planning for agroforestry workshop that Darren Doherty is running, and it's a free like multi-day workshop that it seems like a lot of people here are commercial growers that are already in like the get-go, and it seems like it's geared towards commercial producers and coming up with the farm plan stuff, that it might be a worthwhile resource for folks.
Cool.
And so is it agroforestry in general, or is it like crop specific?
I don't think it's crop specific. I believe it's overall. There's one day that's focusing on key line. There's another day that's focusing on animals. There's a wide range of it. I'm on my iPad, but I can't link it right now.
Get the link. I think I have the link somewhere. I think it's possible someone from our team might be there, Russ. Is Noah going or Sam going to that?
Yeah, I haven't actually talked with anyone, but it is free. So
I'm planning to make the drive out for it.
Cool.
Can you say the name of the event again? I'll just Google it.
I just pasted a link to it in the chat. And yeah, there's sorry, Russ, I accidentally hid the wrong event on our website earlier today. So.
I noticed. All right, everybody. Good to see you all.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Have a good night.
Thanks for hosting. Good night.
Too.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.